Good morning. Good day, everybody. Thank you for joining. Today's session is a real story about building AI in the supply chain. My name is Larry Singleton. I've been with Chain now for a little over 4 years, and there's a reason why I'm only going to do the introductions today, and that's because I'm a salesperson. And what we want to do today is give you a behind the scenes peek into how we've built AI for our customers so that you guys can take and apply what we've learned and bring that with you on your journey with AI. We bring a pretty unique perspective because we've spent the last 10 years being in the middle of new software and legacy systems, and quite literally in the middle as middleware. So we hear a lot of different kinds of AI solutions and different stories. And if I'm being honest, most AI in supply chain right now is either wildly overhyped or it's just vaporware. So what you're getting today is behind the scenes looking at how we've built ours, the good and the bad. And it's intended to help you understand how to build something of your own. Our team spent the last year building a product called Checks. It's an AI powered tool for managing shipment compliance. Brian led the product side. Christa's been running the customer pilots. And between the two of them, you're going to get the full picture today, the build and the real world testing. So hopefully in the next 45 minutes, we're going to give you four things to bring with you after you leave this webinar, what you can actually build in one day with today's AI tools, the unglamorous work it takes to turn a prototype into something production ready, customer pilot stories that we've heard over the last year, including what didn't work, and then what you can do with these same tools, and just as important, what you shouldn't do with these tools today. If you guys caught Brian's keynote speech at the CSCMP Edge Europe, consider this the deeper, more intimate dive in the parts that didn't make his highlight reel there. And if you didn't see it, consider this your invitation to stop waiting on your IT team and to start building. Over to you, Brian.
Thank you, Larry. And I'm going to bring Christa up here along with me. So I'm Brian Glick. For anyone who hasn't met me, I'm the founder, CEO here at Chain. And Christa's with us, who is our chief of staff and has been working very actively with our customers on implementing the tech that we're building in the real world. So Christa, you want to say hi and then we'll dive in?
Hi, everyone. Excited to walk through, as Larry mentioned, some lessons learned and share what we've done thus far.
So we see AI building in as a journey that has five distinct stages. So I'm going to take you through most of it, and Chris is going to hop in for the painful part because she's the one living there out in the real world with all of you, while I get to sit in the back and do the nerdy stuff in the background. So we're going to start with the thing that you should start with if you're building AI, which is the problem. Um, Everyone on this call is a supply chain or transportation professional in some way. I know we have people working inside supply chain teams from shippers, software companies, freight forwarders, customs brokers. So if you're here, you know something that a generic technology person doesn't know, which is the unique part about your business and your pain. And the first encouragement that I give everybody is build to what you know and build to the pain that you have. For me, when I sat down and started looking at all the cool things we could do with this AI uh, more than a year ago, I guess it was last February when I really started, a year February, that I really started thinking about some of these new tools that were coming out with ChatGPT at the time and what have you. The problem that kept rolling around in my head was SOPs. And it was the immense amount of pain that I would feel as someone who used to sell customs brokerage, which was we go to customer QBRs and we'd say the same thing in every meeting. Sorry that we screwed up this thing with your shipment or your entry. We're going to go back to the station that did that, and we're going to have the manager review for that mistake every shipment now going forward. And I'd probably say it 3 times a week as I would travel around the world and visit customers. And we'd go back and we would say something to the manager, and they'd stick a post-it on their note on their desk, or they'd scribble something on the SOP, and they'd promise us that on Fridays they were going to run a report for that customer and they were going to double check all those things. But the reality was that was an infinite stream of exceptions and SOP notes in the corner and things that we, from a technology standpoint, couldn't build into our TMS or our customs brokerage software. A lot of times because they were soft things. They were, oh, this customer doesn't like it when we schedule deliveries on Thursday afternoons in the summer to their facility because they have a team building sessions then, or this customer, we need to know that for this one sub brand that the CEO personally gets involved in that stuff. So we need to send them extra updates via email. Like these are all things that just are not built into TMSs. So people's desks start looking like this wonderful AI generated image. Um, in the scale of things, I started thinking about that problem probably April, and we didn't touch a line of code till October. That's the problem part. But the great thing and the thing that we all should take away first is your problem intimately. And the hardest part of IT in my 30 years doing this has been how do you communicate that to another person who's going to write a requirements document, who's going to give it to a programmer, and each of those people is further away from that problem. So the power of the AI is that now you can take that problem and give it right to the computer. And that's the fun part, right? So that's my favorite part of building with AI is you have all these ideas and I'm intentionally just saying AI here because all the tools that are out there are so good now that find the one that either your company's making available to you or the tool that you can find on the internet, and don't spend a ton of time at the beginning optimizing for what tool. When we started building, we were using a system called Windsurf, and we were flipping between all of these different models and doing all this stuff. And most of my team currently, as far as I know, is kind of landed on Claude Code, and we're happy. And we ignore all the LinkedIn messages telling us about the new amazing thing that came out yesterday, and we just are building. Um, the exciting part is in a day, you can get to a working prototype of something as long as you did that problem step first, as long as you know what you're trying to build. And that feeling is exhilarating. In our example, what I was able to personally do was sit down in one day and have the AI build a tool that allowed me to upload a spreadsheet, put in my email address, and have it check that spreadsheet for some problems. So, do all the UN low codes make sense? I was able to type in a couple of extra rules, like make sure that the shipment, I see on the screenshot, is for fly fishing products, right? Whatever the thing is, and then I could get an email back, and the email would tell me how many times it passed and failed. What I didn't do is in that first day, I didn't worry about user experience. I didn't worry about a database. I didn't worry about, oh, how is this going to scale to 1 million users? There were no screens except for upload, fill in your what rules you want to run, and get an email with the results. That's how you get things that you're building inside of a company. And for all of you who build software products, it's a little different when you're building a product. But if you're building something for yourself, get the minimum there and you can grow from that. Um, the real thing that I see people get stuck on who are new at this is, oh, suddenly I've got to decide on a database and I've got to make these beautiful screens and this and that and the other. Use what you have. There are so many problems that supply chain people have that if you just said, can I take a spreadsheet, put it in a folder, and what's going to come out the other side is a better spreadsheet, I would imagine 50% of the problems that we all have as supply chain professionals, you can solve by building an AI tool that takes a spreadsheet and turns it into a slightly better spreadsheet. And that's awesome. And you should do that. And frankly, and I'm going to say that is at each step along the way, if that solves your problem, stop, right? You don't have to build the perfect thing. You have to build the thing that's better than what you had yesterday. So in our world, in that product, there was no database. There was no memory. There was no updating. Oh, well, the shipment changed from yesterday. We have all those features now. But at the beginning, it was literally just the email. It reads the spreadsheet. It sends the response. Whole thing. Um, that's the fun day. Day two gets harder. And this is the part that you have to know is there, is that you're gonna get to the hard part pretty quickly, which is it doesn't work, right? So one of the things that in that first day product that I had to be careful of when I was using it, which if I was only going to keep it on my laptop would have been fine, I couldn't use the word flag because it's supply chain data. If I said flag this problem, it didn't understand whether I was talking about flagging it because it's good or flagging it that it's bad. And half the time it would go, okay, you told me to flag it, so I'm flagging that you succeeded. And half the time it's I'm flagging that it failed. Um, that's the part that you're going to have. You're going to have it doesn't understand your rules or your nuance. And if you're building something for a team, you're going to find out that your coworker at the next desk has a completely different mental model of the world than you, and the way that you built something and the way that they built some want to use it are not going to match. And so that's the tricky part. It's also not going to run 100% of the time, or your teammates don't understand how it works, or all of these different things. And that's where this iteration comes from. And those of us who have built software for a lot of years, we consider this the fun part, but it's not the fun part when you're not prepared for it. So know that whatever tool you build is going to make a wonderful prototype. And then the trick is to get it in the hands of the people who are going to use that. If it's you and it's only you, use it. And every day, just make the little adjustments that make it a little bit better for you. If it's going to be your team, then get it in their hands quickly and let them start using it and start getting that feedback. I'm going to hand it over to Christa here, and she's going to talk about the first pilot we did alongside the AI and innovation team at Hellman, and some of the lessons that she learned because she was the one out in the field getting this feedback in person. So, Christa, you want to go ahead?
Sure. So as Brian mentioned, I mean, obviously a lot of excitement on the front end of being able to kick off a new product and work with, as Brian mentioned, Hellman team, um, had all the right players, the account team. We were ready to run through after discussing different rule sets, our first shipment. And lo and behold, we run it, and the result was the AI generating a wrong location. And essentially, scratching heads, went to the screens together, worked through quickly what exactly is missing. We know that it was properly routed. The team that we're working with are desk level ops team members that know specifically this is what we do currently. And we came to find out that the root cause of the issue was outdated documentation. And so effectively, the team had acknowledged that, okay, we are still doing what we do every day. And the AI picked up essentially what we had run through as a previous version of an SOP. I think what was crucial about this particular working together, the human aspect really revealed itself that there's a lot of human discussions, understanding the business, so much more than the technology, and being able to work very cohesively with your customers, being able to pick up phones and actually jump on huddles, making sure that we're communicating and identifying ways to overcome. How we solved it for the go forward, again, this was all part of our learning curve, was knowing and recommending for other pilots, start small. Let's make sure that we are not accounting for every single edge case. Let's potentially work with one branch office. Let's specify one trade lane. Let's specifically talk about one particular origin, even. And the ability to work quickly and make sure that that feedback loop is so very critical as part of that initial work because we got some really good product feedback as a result of such. And it just helped build that trust, starting small. I think that was essentially lessons learned in that first one, Brian.
Yeah, and I would add just one more thing on that as a IT executive in we've all trained you to think you have to get it right the first time. And one of the biggest lessons of building with AI is it's so fast to iterate. It's so fast to make changes. And as an example, we had a user provide a piece of feedback yesterday at 2 p.m. my time here in Europe, and by 5 p.m. we had an adjustment in production. So when you're building yourself, you have to unlearn this thing where we all were told you have to get all the requirements right up front because it's going to take 6 months to get a change request through. When you're the one at the keyboard, try it, put it out, like Chris said, one station, one other user, and then just keep changing it. That's honestly the most freeing part of the whole thing. And Chris, I'll pass this next one off.
Yeah, so this one was actually probably a favorite of mine. Working again, different account team, and essentially had our list of use cases for our particular pilot. We were ready to run some rules through. And prior to doing so, um, the person that we were working with, who again was very close to the account, um, had asked a question, there's actually some disruption happening right now. We're understanding that there may be a port strike. And is checks able to account for us potentially surfacing some shipments that may be impacted? And honestly, that was something that caught me a little bit off guard because we had our set planned use cases, we had our scope ready to go. And at that moment, kind of just decided that let's experiment, let's give it a try, let's actually run this particular scenario through the tool and let's see exactly what the results are. And as listed, that's a bit uncomfortable because we didn't know what that outcome would be. But I think that ability to be agile and to just test the capabilities is all part of this process. And so as a result of such, we were able to surface exactly all of those impacted shipment for a specific origin um, between a said date range that was anticipated. And I think, part of the lesson there is that we had this ability to test boundaries, and it was a safe space in conducting as a POC pilot because you have that ability to work together. Again, it's all about feedback, it's all about learning those business scenarios. And so we tested the AI, it surfaced what exactly the customer was looking to ascertain. And there was no harm, right? Nothing was broken. It was just the ability to test something that otherwise we wouldn't have thought of. And previously, kind of thinking that there was a hard line around the scope, this allowed us to just realize that we can challenge ourselves. Um, Additionally, another lesson, is just that challenging our customers to not always think of the easy scenarios, but where does that pain lie? And I think they are often the scenarios that also allow the customers to understand the business objectives, and therein lies some value, right? If in fact you can find a painful situation, something that would surface something that causes the most pain for those operators, you now have a very clear line as to what that business objective is, and potentially be able to use your tool and show that value. Um, so again, kind of just to recap, don't use the easy cases, right? Just think bigger, broader. And in this case, knowing that disruption is such a common thing these days, it was just a very, very pivotal moment to just realize that we can test the tool.
Yeah, and I will say I was gun shy when this one came across in our Slack channel. And what I've learned is that regularly what these AI tools can accomplish surprises me. I'm like, oh, that'll never work. And then it just works. And to put it maybe a little more precision on one of the things Krista said was, our customers' expectations have often been way too low. Almost every pilot that we kick off with this tool that can read SOPs and make all of his interpretive decisions, the when it's with a freight forwarding team, the first question that goes, "Oh, can it tell us if we forgot to enter the arrival date, or can it tell us if we forgot to enter this charge code?" Right? And we're like, "Yes, but let's try something much, much harder." And that's no credit to the chain technology. It's a credit to just the way that this category of software works now. So when you're building things, one of the things you should very much do is until something isn't working, try something harder, because you may find that the boundary is much, much, much more extreme than you thought it was. I mean, for me, I would say whatever expectation I had for just what these LLMs can do when they're wired into a piece of software that actually where you've brought your own knowledge to it is 10 or 100 times more than my expectation was. So, and I have relatively high expectations. So keep trying things, and you may be very, very surprised. This last one, Chris and I are going to kind of tag team this a little bit, but this is where things got probably the ugliest in our building, was no matter how well we built with AI, no matter how much we could build, we had to understand how people were going to use the tool, right? And everything you build, even if it's for yourself, you have to know how you're going to engage with it so that it doesn't become a toy that 24 hours later ends up just sitting on the shelf and you never touch again. And promise you, I built 20 of those in the last year. And the staying power is understanding the workflow. And Krista, maybe give a little bit of the feedback, and then I can talk a little bit about how we solve for it. So
So I think initially there were some bells and whistles, and to Brian's point, essentially some really cool features, functionality from a UI perspective. Um, and that was great until some of the customers were really struggling with how do we actually transition it into using it every single day. And so I think what we often referred to was almost a behind the curtain, right? Because it was all about the art of potential and trying to understand exactly how we could ensure that this is something practical and that it is here to solve a challenge, an issue that the ops team is encountering. How do we translate that it's something easy and to be able for the actual account owners, et cetera, whoever has access to the tool to actually make it meaningful in their day to day, and so that the value would be something that output is realized. Um, it was difficult. I mean, some of that feedback, to Brian's point, was I understand how it's intended, but what is that going to mean for me and how I'm using my TMS? How is it going to come back? And I think, again, trying to understand part of the business challenges is about that human conversation. Um, and so how we solved it, I think, was really trying to have it become a more universal metaphor. And really, just as that lesson has highlights about what do people know today? The spreadsheets, the emails, things that are relative to their daily life, reconfigured part of the UI to reflect that.
and I'll show you. So these are some of the first, say, 2 months worth of screenshots that we ship to production. And there's a danger that I want to point out in some of these screenshots, that the AI is really good at taking you down the wrong path. Um, the one that's kind of front and center here has these four buttons at the bottom. Those are not actually buttons. They're conceptually trays, and you could drag every shipment into it, whether you had solved the shipment, whether you were working on it. And I was super excited about this because it had all these awesome animations. You drop something in the tray and the tray glowed and all this stuff. And I probably spent a day just playing with all of that before I had handed this back to our dev team. You can see there's lots of colors on all of these screens and boxes, but the this all felt really good, and the AI let me keep building, and it will always let you keep building more and more and more features because it's great at it. And like things that used to get filtered out when you would give it to IT because they didn't have time for your bright idea, and they'd say, no, no, we're just gonna do it the way we do everything else. Doesn't get filtered out when you're working on your own. And A, you can burn a lot of time on it, but B, you can build something that doesn't look like everything else. And when you're building business apps, building something that looks like everything else is actually a feature, not a bug, because it makes it easy for other people to use. So, look, if it's going to be on your desk and you want little puppies to run across the screen every time you type a letter, make little puppies that run across the screen, and that's fun and that's awesome. But if you're going to roll it out to your team or you're going to build something that you're going to share with the whole company or that's going to be used in a different culture in a different country, which we all live in this environment, or with a vendor or a supplier or a warehouse operator, then learn from our mistakes and build something that they understand. So this is roughly what the product looks like today, or at least a couple of a month ago. We've even made some recent revisions because we build really fast now to make this even more usable. But it looks like Outlook. It's got an inbox and it's got a folders and it's got each of your shipments represented the way an email looks. And there's some simple tabs across the top. And frankly, I like the other one better. But when we were rolling out in China and we were rolling out in India and we were rolling out in Germany at the same time and trying to get people to understand what to do, the idea that it's moving from a folder to another folder was just one less conversation we had, and that all the tabs were across the top. One less conversation we had. So part of the lesson that we learned was build the thing that people can understand. And as we go through and iterate each week and really each day, it's actually become building less and making the features deeper, but keeping the interface very simple. If you're thinking about something on your desk, this is the spreadsheet example I gave at the beginning. If you can turn a spreadsheet into a more useful spreadsheet, you don't have to train anybody on that. You just send them the spreadsheet. If you turn that spreadsheet into a 40-page a dashboard with all of these tabs and all of these filter operations, every single one of those things is a thing where someone may have to come back and ask you a question, and you're not an IT department and you don't want to be the help desk for the software you built. So just make it simple. That's really, really the biggest guidance I can give from that. The next phase, as we softly segue into, you now have a thing, is you have a decision to make. And this decision's a little bit different between a software company and when you work inside of a company and you're not building software for a living, which is what do you want to do with the thing that you built that now works? Because if you want to scale it, if you work in a 15,000 person company and you think all 15,000 people would benefit from this thing, that is a very different commitment than it works on my desktop and I'm just going to leave it on my desktop. Um, you should make that decision consciously and say, okay, I think this thing would be beneficial to the 5 people sitting around me. Or I think this thing would be beneficial to our entire company, or I think this thing would be beneficial to the entire world. If you don't make that decision distinctly, you may find yourself spending more time supporting the little tool you built than doing your day job. And that's not a really healthy place to be either. My advice for most people is keep it on your desktop. If you build something and it works, and maybe the person next to you wants to use it, give them a copy and say, hey, you're on your own, or here's the code. Go, get your AI to make it work the way you want it to work. If you can keep it small, you stay doing your job and you're more productive. If you want to scale it, then that's where you got to bring in the professionals. Because that's where no matter how much AI you have, change management, having someone like Christa come in to help roll it out globally and build process management, or figuring out the different levels of security that you're going to need and all of those things, that's a handoff where you do need to bring professionals in who do software for a living. And there's a kind of a big debate in the world right now where all software companies are going to go away. This is the reason they're not, because doing a global deployment of a piece of software with security levels and GDPR requirements and local data sovereignty hosting issues in China, or even just who's going to answer the call at 3 in the morning when the cool container allocation thing you built suddenly stops working and nobody in the warehouse can ship. You don't want to be on the end of that phone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That's where, if you want to scale, there needs to be a team around you. Um, so it's not that IT is the enemy. It's that you don't need to bring them in to build things locally anymore, but you do need to bring them in to build things globally. And I think those of you who are on from software companies, you already know the pain, but for people who are building software internally inside of companies, it's none of that has changed, right? So if you're, in an IT department today, the fact that you can build things faster, remember that the bulk of the work is over the, say, 10-year life cycle of a product is not in the building, it's in the supporting. So if you can choose to keep it small, that is my advice. If you want to make it big, make sure you're doing it in an organized way, because the speed that this wave will crash over you when suddenly your thing catches fire and becomes mission critical, it is a very unpleasant experience. Um, I see we've got a question here. I'm going to save that one to the end, but we will absolutely get to your questions. Please use the Q&A. The last bit of this is that sustainability, right? Is getting to the point where you either say enough is enough and I have a tool that works, or I have a tool that's going to be thrown away, or I have a tool that I want to scale. And those are really the things where you want to say, and again, it's about being thoughtful, is if I've hit the point where it solves my problem, I can stop building now. And these tools get a little addictive, right? So if it solves your problem, stop building. If it isn't solving your problem, stop building. If you want to scale it and you need to build a lot more features, then keep building, but know that you're doing that one way or the other. I'm going to show a quick chart here. This is only up to date through when I gave the presentation at CSCMP, but it was accurate to that time. This is the number of code commits that we made into the platform by phase. So this is the number of times we said, let's ship something to production, as a rough metaphor. You can see, and I mentioned this early, the first few months, nothing. I sat and thought, made sure I understood the problem, right? And that was really just me personally who had this idea for this new product, just sitting around, giving it thought and making some notes and just really making sure I really wanted us to commit to that marathon, because as a software company, you sort of make that decision step all the way at the beginning, and then you have to make it again. You can see day one there, that 9, that was the fun day. Oh my God, I made a thing, it worked. It made all these revisions and it was so cool. And then you can see the painful part. So from the time we released the code in October through sort of the end of the first pilot that we did alongside our partners at Hellman, you can see there was a steady buildup, including people getting back from Christmas and a big spike right there. That was all the feedback happening. And then you can see it got quiet for a week. That quiet week was us sitting down and saying, okay, we've now got some learnings. Do we really, again, want to make this commitment to this product? Because right now we have one customer who's gone through a pilot and we can say no and we can stop. And we actually did stop coding and sat down and thought about that. And then we decided yes, we want to do that. And then you can see there was a big spike as we then took all the feedback from the pilot. And frankly, it's only ramped up since then as we've gotten more efficient and effective. But I wanted to include this chart because I think it's a good mental map for what the thing you do in code, how that maps to the thought process. Um, the most important part and sort of the hidden step is do something. I think the tools are accessible now, and if Claude Code is intimidating to you, there's other tools out there that are more user friendly. Things like Replit and Lovable are the famous ones that let you build things kind of just by typing in what you want. Um, Everyone should have that experience. Even if you know you're not going to keep it, everyone should do it once because it will help you understand what you can ask your IT department for. And frankly, trying something and seeing where it's hard will give you a better understanding of what you can go ask for because it may be a lot more than you think you can ask for. And to be able to, and actually, as a slight aside, any reasonable IT person inside of a company, if you come and say, I built a prototype of something and I'm fully aware that it's a prototype that could never see production, but I want you to look at it so you can understand what I'm thinking, they will love you for it. If you come and say, I built this thing, now why isn't it in production? That's maybe unreasonable, but it's a really good way to get those thoughts out into something that's more of a picture so that you know whether you have something you can ask for. But absolutely, there is no harm in trying. And you might find it's a lot of fun. And worst case scenario, you're going to end up a big geek like all of us here at Chain. Um, so I think we're going to move to Q&A now. Christa, if you want to maybe take the lead there, and if anybody wants to open up the Q&A box and throw in any questions, whether it's on the process or the product or anything really, we're wide open. So go ahead. So.
So I see Raj had posed a question. Can we talk a bit about the explainability of a decision the AI made when it, say, selected a particular location warehouse network in the context of a supply chain?
Yeah, so this is a big issue with AI, building AI in certain contexts, particularly around compliance, but also it does have the tendencies sometimes to do two different things. One is just give you an answer, and two is give you an answer and then you ask why, but it's really coming up with the why after it gave you the answer, so it's sort of justifying itself. What we did in our product, and this is kind of gets into I'm going to call it the relatively advanced level of things that you can think about if you want to go through that painful part, is the way we prompt the AI to ask the question is not just what our users type in. So user types in, pick the best make sure the location is reasonable. What we're actually saying to the AI is, here's all the structured data. Here's the question that it was asked, and I want you to think through based on the SOP, and like we kind of give it the thought process. We say, read the SOP, articulate the rules out loud. Then from those rules, which are now kind of in its head, now I want you to make the decision and then also give us an extra paragraph as why. And I'm going to resist temptation to pull up a window and do a live demo here, but one of the things that's interesting in our product now, because we got this feedback, when the AI says you failed a rule, hey, you sent this to the wrong location, there's a little hover, and the AI gives like a 2 or 3 sentence summary of why it thought that, but we have it actually in the code writing that summary before it gives you the answer, because that way we know that it's an actual thought process and not a justification after the fact. So it's a question of kind of sequencing the way we do it inside the product. Again, very specific to maybe our problem set, but that's kind of the answer for that one. So
Can I throw a question into
sure.
the mix? I think for the benefit of the audience and just sharing candidly, Brian, any anything that you would do from a chain perspective for insight purposes, you would do differently from starting conceptually to where we're at today?
So even though we shipped fast, I would have shipped the product faster. Um, the quality of using real people and real data and getting real answers is cannot be matched, right? So when you think you are 5% done, ship that. And this has been the advice in software for 20 years at this point, but I think with AI tools even more so because it I think we've probably all seen the news articles about this AI psychosis and this idea that when people make friends with an AI, it just tells them they're right all the time. Well, the same thing happens when you're coding with it. It reinforces its own thing and it'll just keep taking you down a path. And then you find out it's the wrong path, like me building animations on the drop. Um, the the that idea of getting in front of people is huge. And I think honestly, pulling that whole thing forward even a month or two would have been a better move for us.
And I think we see one more question that was posed. Can you talk more about change management? Do you really need an outside team for it to go well?
Um, I hate to say it depends, but it depends. So I think the answer depends on whether you're doing a global rollout, to be honest. If you're rolling something out, obviously, if you're doing something for yourself, you don't change management's easy. If you're doing something with people on a team that you talk to every day, that is the change management. I'll show it to you and all of that. Um, if you're rolling something out, I think right now with one of our customers, we're rolling out something like 25 different pods inside of a company who all have to give us feedback. And we have to incorporate that feedback. And where our goal is to action their feedback inside 2 or 3 days. That takes tracking spreadsheets. That's when you need to say, okay, I'm going to roll this thing out to 300 vendors. They're all going to call and scream, right? Because people don't like change. That's where, and I don't know that has to be an outside team, but you have to be prepared for that. And it's no different than if you're a forwarder, um, and you go and change anything in your station. You change the color of the pens, you're going to get 100 phone calls. And if you're a shipper, if you change one dot on your purchase order form, all your vendors suddenly want to renegotiate the pricing, right? So know that these things do affect people in the real world, and you just have to scale appropriately. We're right at about 45 minutes here, but if anyone has any other questions, please drop them in now. Um, Otherwise, we really appreciate it. We'll be sending out emails, obviously, with the links and the kind of the recording and all of that. But if anyone has questions, um, I always say if you come and interrupt me on LinkedIn to ask a question about the process, you're saving me from a budget meeting. So I really appreciate that. So ping me on LinkedIn, email us info@Chain.io. And we're happy to answer that. And obviously, if anybody wants to take a look at the product, go to the Chain.io and there's a 1 minute demo video that's pretty cool. But we're always here to chat. And thank you everyone for your time. And we're
Thank
gonna
you.
wrap up with that.
Thank you for joining.